welcome today to another episode of this podcast that we've started. It's really exciting to be here, and today I have one of my favorite people, that is Aakash Sareen. He also is my brother, so I've known him for a very long time, and he is the CTO here and the co-founder at Copper. And I say Copper instead of Copper Mobile because next year we are changing our name from Copper Mobile to Copper Digital. Welcome to this podcast, and can't wait to have a great conversation with Aakash and just really talk through some of the learnings that we've had over the last 12 years and maybe even going back. Really excited, and let's hear the inspiring story of Aakash and see what it takes to be a CTO of a multinational company, of a digital transformation company, of a startup. So here you are. So Aakash, welcome.
Thank you so much.
I'm very excited to have you here, of course. For our audience, for the people who don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself. Introduce yourself if you don't mind.
To my introduction, I'm Aakash Sareen. I'm the co-founder and CTO here at Copper Mobile. I was born in 1984 in Delhi, did my schooling from Delhi, and then went to IIT Chennai for my mechanical engineering bachelor's and master's in energy technology.
Fantastic. Okay. So when did you decide that you wanted to be an engineer?
I think it was somewhere around 13 to 14 because till then I was just the rebellious kid or just the naughty kid. I didn't have to go back and listen to something or read up a lot. It was just whatever I heard in the class, that was enough for me to, cruise by till 8, 9. But that's when everyone started talking about, hey, what are you going to do after 12th? Are you going to go to college in DC, or are you going to go to the Delhi University? Are you going to take commerce or science or arts? That's when I thought that, hey, this engineering looks good.
Got it. So elaborate more on being that naughty kid.
I think there are infinite stories, but one of the earliest ones is I was probably 5 or 6 and I was at my Masi's place, that's my aunt. So they had something very precious and they told me, Aakash, this is really delicate, to not touch this. And I said, okay. Everyone went to sleep, and then, the wheels started turning, and I was very curious. I was like, what was in it? What was in it? So I went down at 12 in the night and I tried to see it and I broke it.
That's crazy.
Now that I'm thinking about it, talking to you, I think it was a lot about curiosity. I was always very curious about finding things, seeing how things work, even building some things. Somewhere around 7, 8 is also when I tried to, repair my own bike. So I was able to take it all apart. I was unable to put it back.
Christoph Luneberger actually interviewed some 3,000 CEOs and tried to understand what makes these people really successful. And curiosity was one of that, important traits. And I feel like that had a lot of role in your success as well. So tell me about where did your curiosity lead you from there? And then how did you get interested in engineering? Tell me more about that.
This is about 1998. The computer was just getting popular in India. I got my first computer from our uncle. That's the first time I just started using DOS essentially. And so just by trial and error and exploring it, I figured out there was already a WordPad in it. Did some tinkering. Come 98, I think this is 4 or 5 years from then. And that's when I built my first PC and got interested in not so much programming, but just the hardware part of it and just the different kind of applications, more like GUI-based applications. That was the curiosity part, which probably led to an interest in engineering. I don't think I actually understood what engineering actually completely meant. But to me, all tech, computers, cars, all that meant engineering. And I was always curious about that. And I thought, I don't know anything about this. That will be really interesting and food for my brain.
So then you were interested in engineering. Then what happens next? So when did you start prepping for IIT?
I knew that, this is one pathway. And 13 is when we started talking about whether you're going to be in non-medical or medical and all that. So that's when I knew I'm going to go the pathway of engineering. And I started my first classes somewhere around 15. So after giving the boards, didn't chill out or didn't say, okay, 3 months of holidays. When we started, there were about 15 people from my class that started going there. No one was getting anything for the first 3 months because that's just the nature of the game. For first 2 months, you just have to be diligent and just listen and pay attention. But I persisted, and there were incidents that happened. I gave one of his exams, and I think I scored 140 out of 160, which was unbelievable for me or anyone. And that's the first time I thought, hey, I think I can do this. I get it. it'll require a lot of effort. I have a chance, basically. I didn't think that I'll be able to make it, but I can make it.
You got into IIT. What was that feeling like? I mean, getting into the IITs, the very first kid in the entire family, and I think maybe even in school. How did that make you feel?
From our school, I was the only one in that year.
So then what was the feeling like when you first got the news? How was that? And
you won't like the answer, but I actually went to Gandhiji's Shantipat. I went there and I cried because I was like, oh, I didn't get a good enough rank.
Oh, you had 1405, and it's amazing. And this is all over India. And I don't know how many people take the test. I mean, I know
1
millions.
Million. About 1.5 million.
1.5 million. Okay, good. Yeah, and I've heard that it's harder to get into the IITs than it is Stanford, Harvard, and a lot of the other colleges. So that's great. So you got in, and you initially did not like it, that it's not a good enough rank, that you're not going to get the college that you want or the stream.
I probably wasn't thinking about that far.
Okay.
Although that was a factor, later when once I got into IIT, I did think about that. When you clear IIT, there's a saying that beggars can't be choosers. You get what you get. You get the branch you get the stream you get, because you could be 70 ranked and you could want Kanpur comp science and you may still not get it.
The question that I have, maybe that there would be some benefit for the audience as well. You get your engineering in a certain stream. You're a chemical engineer. Like I had at Texas A&M, a lot of my buddies were in chemical engineering, and then they really found jobs as QA or process engineer or some other field that was unrelated. So can you tell me how IIT prepared you for this role that you're in now? As a CTO, whatever it is that you do, so how did IIT prepare you for this role of CTO of Copper Digital? Yes.
I think we have a saying in IIT that IIT teaches you to make windows in a room with no doors. You of course go through the grind of all sorts of exposure. So during your first year, I did foundry, I did smithy, I did PVCs, I did engines. So they had professional labs for pretty much everything that's required for any sort of an industrial solution, including chemicals, steel manufacturing. That gave us good exposure into what your inclination might be. I think the most important part is the community that you have there. The people who I met, some of the sharpest people I've ever met in my life, and that inspires you to excel even more, because you can get pigeonholed in your own place or in your own town, and you may think that you're the bomb there or whatever. But once you go, you realize, oh, there are people who are so skilled, like they can play saxophone like a professional, orchestra person, and they can also do debate, and they also study really well. They are also good at sports. So you realize that you don't have to excel in one. You can, be multidisciplinary. And once you do that, I think your prejudices go away and your horizons open up.
Wow. Okay. No, that's a great answer. And I think that is also something that's related to you are an average of 5 people you hang out with. And I had a very similar experience. When I got my MBA from UT, everybody that was in my cohort, I saw they were so intelligent, so unique. Some of them directors at IBM, and from a lot of these different journeys that they had come and different experiences and exposure. And that really motivated me to be a better version of myself. Are you of the opinion that schools have universally been a place where you go get your education? What's the advice for the younger audience here?
I think my advice is that at 17, no one is going to know what their eventual career will be. If they do know, pursue that. If it requires a college, do it. If it doesn't require a college, don't do it. If you're sure of what you want to be, you don't need a college. But you need a college to figure out what all exists in the world. So that's the reason why I think people should go to college, to expand their horizons. But if you're sure of yourself, if you know what you want to be, I don't think you need college. You can, learn on the job. You can just get into exactly the profession you're in.
I love it. You go get exposure, whatever it is that you want to do, as long as there's that general focus that you're going to be learning a little bit about a lot of different fields, which engineering is a great way to learn about a lot of different fields and then see what might be important for you. And I feel like MBA is very similar as well.
Yes. I think I have the same problem as a lot of people, and I'm mentoring a bunch of people at IIT right now as well, and they're also, we're listening to the same things. at the end of your 4 years or 5 years, depending on if you're doing your bachelor's and master's, you are not sure. There are so many things you can do. You can go study, higher education. You can do your master's or your PhD. You can go abroad and do that. You can also pursue a corporate job in your engineering degree. There's always a need for intelligent people or analytical people. It was KPO boom, or now it's about machine learning and data analytics. So there are a lot of companies who will just come and hire people based on just their analytical skills and the ability to learn. They would just take that as their career.
So just a completely different field, whatever it is that you get an opportunity in front of it. So just kind of go with the flow, and if you find it interesting, just double down.
But I think it's better to have a talk with someone and take a chance at one of them. And if you don't like it, then you can always pivot.
Our audience wants to hear, how did you get into being that CTO and co-founder at Copper Mobile?
After my graduation, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. So I did what most of the people do and do whatever friends are doing, right? And I joined intellectual property research, and I did that for 2 years. Essentially what you have to do there is just read a bunch of patents and understand what is inside them and explain it to lawyers. Did that for about 2-3 years. Coincidentally, in multi-touch patent field as well, I was working on a whiteboard for school kids in Middle East with one of the founders to help make that prototype which can be used to teach kids. It was going to be multi-touch as well. I think there was a person at MIT who first came up with that. The fact that we can track all different fingers on the screen. He's the one who did the first demo. It was kind of a big table, and he showed that you can use.
So that's what multi-touch is, when you have to use multiple
fingers to.
Okay.
Essentially, earlier we only had one single tap, right?
Right.
Touch point. But then tracking each finger independently, that's what started the multi-touch revolution, right?
Okay.
So on your phone also, the two-finger gesture, the swipe. So the screen technology evolved enough that we could have gestures and all that. Previously, when you had stylus, you were just tapping. After a series of such jobs, and that's when I got a call from you talking about, hey, I see a huge opportunity.
And I'd like to highlight that perhaps there was a lot of luck involved as well, because the reason that we accelerated down that path and started the company was because I had lost my green card. I was stuck in Brazil in April 2010. I wasn't allowed to go back to the US, and I just happened to come to Delhi because that was the only place, having an Indian passport and no green card. So that's when we really got an opportunity to work really hard on it and just be face to face and work in that bedroom. And we had a third friend of ours as well who kind of tagged along, at least for a while. And then we were just, you created the first logo of it. And I remember I just using the Vonage phone and having that lead source that I knew about. And just, you guys were sick of me pitching it to so many customers for 45 minutes, that same story, and talking about how we could do an amazing job of creating an iPhone app for you. And here comes the demo, and taking them through that team viewer demo.
It's so interesting. Back then, you're right, back then it did feel like that, but all credit to you. If you wouldn't have done that, there won't be any Copper Mobile, because as everyone knows, every company, you need sales, and you were the one who had the confidence to first figure out what needs to be told, then practice in front of a mirror, and then have those meaningful conversations with prospective clients and giving them the confidence, and also encouraging us and getting us to a place where we delivered it successfully. So hats off to you.
Well, thank you. You're too kind there. I feel like luck plays such an important role, because you could do everything right, but still not get the results, and for a very long time. That's why a lot of people, when they could just draw a direct line and say, hey, I did this, and this, and this is the recipe for success. It truly is. And it's so important to keep doing the right things and then wait for that perfect opportunity. And along the way, of course, you got to feed yourself. So the analogy is that, you're going to get that white elephant, but have the patience and that consistency to, continue to hunt for whatever comes your way a little bit. Excellent. So that gave us an opportunity, and I spent 2.5 months here. We got our first office in Noida, an executive suite, a co-working space with just 3 chairs, and 2 of us, because we were 5 people, would sit outside in the lobby And, the salespeople didn't get a computer or a desk. So, it's so interesting. And because we started touching on that story, it's also interesting to understand the journey of a startup. And I want to show you this. This is a startup curve that I have seen. So there is initially, we had like $350,000 in revenue, like the very first year, and we made $40,000. From that, we thought, wow, this is great. But wait till 2011, we had bookings of $3 million suddenly. And look at this. If you see the startup curve, this is like initially you feel like you've gotten all this success, and then that wears off because the wearing off of the novelty. Then you go through this trough of sorrow that goes down, and then there's all these wiggles of hope, and then comes the promised land, and then finally acquisition of liquidity and upside of buyers. So there's just such an interesting graph. I know our editors can kind of superimpose this on this podcast. Sure. Being the CTO of the company, and what is it that you do now? 12 years fast forward, what do you do now at Copper Mobile? What's your day in life?
I tell people that being a co-founder or a founder or being in a startup, even an equity holder, I think that's a 24/7 job. It's kind of like having a baby. It's still my baby, our baby, and the answer is everything. But if I were to, quantify it for people who are looking for insights into what a day-to-day role looks like, I think the highest priority item is any blocker with respect to technology. So if we have some sort of a deployment or we have a feasibility analysis, do a POC, I believe that's my most important job, because when clients trust us with a solution, I have to make sure that that's not, fairy dust. It has to be a technically viable solution, and I have to, bet my hat on it and say end to end that we would be able to make everything that I'm telling them work. Of course, we've been doing this for 12 years, so we have a lot of recipes already ready to go. There are a lot of interesting projects that we do wherein I make sure that there is a proof of concept that's validated. Besides that, it's also training and what is the path that needs to be adopted by our developers. What does the future look like? What are the technologies that we need to invest in, whether we're going to adopt cross-platform or not? What is our posture with respect to, let's say, even cloud or hybrid technology or web apps running in a native container? So I need to be aware of all of that, train people on that, make sure that we keep the right technology stack and also keep the right technologists.
Got it. Very interesting. I think then in that case, as a CTO, you're really responsible for all things tech, and you are sort of that tech brain who is evaluating everything that's happening in our environment, in the tech space, at the intersection of various technologies, emerging technologies.
I would like to close the loop on that again. As a CTO, you're not a lone wolf. Yes, you are the end all for any technical discussion or architecture discussion, what languages to use, what frameworks to use, what's the right technology, all of that. But you're still beholden to the CEO and to the shareholders of the company and to the board to provide them the expertise when they need it. You are essentially their pillar, and they depend on you to talk the talk and walk the walk when we need to solve those kind of problems. That's a critical part of my job, wherein I have to talk to clients, I have to understand what their problem is, with respect to their technical journey, with respect to their digital transformation strategy, what we can craft for them, what my team is discussing with them, what are their problem pain points, and how do I translate those business and functional discussions into technical requirements or technical discussions, and then come back to them with a solution. That's also another very, very key part of being a CTO.
And there's an interesting story on that. You guys won't believe it. We had somebody come up with Snapchat idea before Snapchat. This entrepreneur came to Copper Mobile and said, I'd like an app where people could send messages that just go away and nobody could copy it or take a picture of it. And the answer that we, at that time, the 2-year-old Copper Mobile that we were, gave that, okay, well, this is maybe possible on Android, but definitely not possible on iPhone. and you cannot prevent anybody from taking a screenshot or having a different phone. So the answer to his very specific question was that no, this is not possible. And the customer eventually did not like that when he saw the popularity of Snapchat. And of course, that was a few years down the road, and they probably had more access to certain APIs that were open for them and at that time.
We have tried to go by the book since the beginning. The first thing I read after you said that yes, we are opening this and we're going to do iPhone development, I read their security architecture book. It was this thick book, and I really like Apple's principles. I know there are a lot of bashers out there, there are a lot of fanboys out there. At the intersection of that, there is an actual value-based system that they have, that they are not here to sell or profit off of your data as such. They're providing you their device, their services. So I believe that that's somewhere that
so they're not evil.
Yeah, that's also funny because I went to a forum recently, or I went to a documentation, or actually it was terms and licenses of using Cloud Convert. And the line, we have very simple rules. Don't be evil. We are providing it to you as is, use it, but don't use it for malicious intent.
Got it. Interesting.
Apple is really dynamic, and that's another part of Apple which I like. The App Store rules evolve with the platform, with the acquisition and discoveries of new technologies, right? There were rules before that were different, and then once Apple sees that, hey, there is a need for something, they evolve those rules. Some things get added as, with the proliferation of social media and how toxic it can be. Earlier there was no rule that you require to have a button for reporting. But then now any social media application or anywhere where user can generate content and people can see that content automatically, it needs to have a button to report that this is maybe objectionable material, maybe too graphic. So these rules evolve. And back then, it was not possible to do what they were asking us. And that's one of our responsibilities, to go back and look at the rule book and look at, the API documentation and tell them, hey, this is what is possible, this is what is not possible. We don't work with jailbroken phones. A lot of things are possible if you take the black hat route. We don't do that.
Well, great. We only have a few minutes left. What advice would you like to offer to anybody in the audience, or even some of the CIOs, CTOs that may find it interesting, that would like to get information about digital transformation, or what happens at startups when they're driving innovation and creating those MVPs? And if there are some of those people in our audience, then what advice would you give to them, or any topic that you'd like to share?
I think I would give the advice of enabling your teams to conduct more experiments. The cost of conducting experiments, not just monetary, but also the risk cost, right? That has gone down, and it's pretty much zero for some cases. In the past, for you to test something out meant stopping the work line, or doing it, erecting a completely new infrastructure and all that. Now you can just simulate it in a way. So you can, at a fraction of a cost, set that same infrastructure in a virtualized environment, and then plug and play. You can remove certain things. You can even make it self-provisioning. By enabling your employees to conduct those experiments instead of you having to do all of that, you would increase the rate of innovation.
Absolutely.
I think that leads to a lot of innovation. People do talk about Google graveyard of projects, but they don't talk about the innovation that may have been a result of the team working on something that is not being continued anymore, but the insights they get are theirs, right?
Absolutely. There are so many more topics and so many more questions that we would have loved to go through, but unfortunately, this is all the time we had today. If you like this podcast, and especially speaking with Aakash, leave your comments, and then we'd be happy to bring you more of this content, at least while Aakash is here in this office, in this region. We'd love to have more of this information for you. And thank you everyone for watching this podcast. Thank you, Aakash, for sharing your valuable suggestions and sharing your story. I know that this is going to be inspiring for a lot of people. And thank you everyone for watching. Until next time, see you.